capital raising, this is how you find really good partners.
So I have another question on top of it. So let's say you have 3 partners, okay, but the equity is like an uneven.
Yep.
Let's say the one partner is 50%, another 2 partner is 30 and 20. But when you're sharing the roles and responsibility, do you think it should be accounted as a 50, 30 and 20? Because sharing the same responsibility with the equity is not balanced.
Sure. I think that's less of a point. When you get into it, everybody's going to be pulling. So yeah, I would try to allocate them equitably, not necessarily like this is 50% of the responsibilities. And this is one mindset that I always say, if you're going to go into a partnership with somebody, you got to like the person so much that even if I put in 50% of the cash, I want to make Cole so much money because I like him and he's a nice guy, even if he kind of is lazy. I want him to make money. And if you have that mindset and you're willing to do it, I almost guarantee every partner will think that. Cole's busting his butt. He's making so much money for Ron. And I say, I'm busting my butt. I'm making money for Cole. But if you're willing to accept that, then the partnership works. And you just got to get through one, make money, and then you guys can part ways. But to see it through, again, the capital, the equity contributions is important. I don't necessarily recommend equal. I don't like 50-50 if there's just 2 of you. That causes more disputes on decision making because you can have gridlock. There are solutions. We do clauses like you can defer it to Hamza and say, Hamza, you decide. Should we sell for 4 million or 4.2? We cannot decide. And you can defer to a neutral third party, or you can flip a coin. I mean, there's all sorts of legally enforceable mechanisms to do a tiebreaker, but I would really prefer doing 51-49. So at the end of the day, I would just, look, this is my project. I respect your opinion. We're going to list for 4.2. And it's the end of it. It can be very decisive. One of the biggest things that I think, you guys, depending on how much real estate experience you have, you've got to be decisive. There is no wrong decision between listing for 4.2 or 4 million for a quick sale. Neither one is wrong. But you know what is wrong is waiting 6 months, missing the market, interest rates continue to rise, and you've just screwed up your business plan over $200,000. Now you can't even sell for 3.8. So decisive decision making is really important, and I think having a good operating agreement that eliminates 50-50 solves that. Again, decision making rules, if you have 3, can be good because then just 2 partners can kind of gang up on the third. But if all 3 of you get along, that can work. Also 50, 20, 30, a lot of decisions will require, call it 51% vote, and then some decisions, may be unanimous. Maybe not that one, but the 50% needs to convince one of the other 2. Otherwise, there's gridlock. Exit strategies, buyouts. We see a lot of clauses that say, okay, if we're all 50 or if all 30, if you want to get out, then a price that you quote for your shares, you have to be willing to buy mine. And that works better if the parties have liquidity. But if somebody really does want to get out, they should offer a valuation of the project, whether it's complete and leased or not. And they say, I value my share at X. And they say, okay, if you want to get bought out, then you can buy mine at that valuation. So it's a pretty powerful tool, assuming you have some liquidity internally. But exit strategies, there's always going to be death, divorce, and dissolution. Those are kind of the 3. Conflict resolution. So there's a little bit counterintuitive because I do not see most partner fights if the project is going sideways. And by sideways, I mean it's struggling, it's break even, it's got 50% occupancy, you're dealing with this issue, you've got a bad sewer line, blah, blah. Those partners usually buckle together and everybody just works to fix the problem. Conflicts arise when you're making a lot of money. And so I'll give you a perfect example, but when there's money and free cash flow, there's something to fight over. And if you have, say, 2 partners or 3 partners, and we're doing a deal in St. Louis, Missouri, and we're in Dallas, we've got one guy doing site selection, and he's flying up there. And he's looking at sites, he's flying, he's away from his family, he's eating in hotels. He's like, hey man, this sucks. It's very tiring. I'm gonna fly business class and stay in a kind of a nice hotel. The other partners say that's a waste. Like, I'm over here in Dallas and you're just wasting our money. You don't get to stay in business class or first class or whatever. But if we have the free cash flow, he feels like he can spend it because he's away from his family. I get it. If anybody who's traveled for work, it sucks. And so having good policies about travel, expense reimbursement, items above $1,500 have to get approved by the partners. Putting things like that can just add some additional layers. And it can be text message. It doesn't need to be some formal, legal contract that says, I approve it. It's just, do you have the obligation to get it in written approval ahead of time? And if you just text it and be like, hey, I'm going on this flight, business class or whatever, it costs $1,200. Is that okay? Yes. That's all you need. But conflict occurs when there's actually something to be fought over. And an illiquid real estate asset is not necessarily what people can fight over because there's just no money. Common issues, guys, I'm more than halfway done. Differences in vision and goals, I think that's very important, especially as developers. A common business plan is to build, lease, and sell. Your IRR gets crushed the longer every day that you hold it. You take on interest rate risk, you take on different types of staffing, management that you're not necessarily designed for. You guys are going to be developers. Developers buy, build, lease, and sell. They don't hold this thing as a generational asset. And you have to figure out, what do you guys want to do? And you very well may buy and build and hold it for yourself, but you guys should be in alignment on that because that's a very clear difference between, I'm more of like a long-term investor who says, okay, I'm going to hold this for 3 years or 5 years. It doesn't really matter, but I know that I'm eventually going to sell. Some solutions, you can require mediation, resolution process. Again, submitting yourself to neutral third parties is fast, and it kind of, if it's people that you respect, and if they tell you like, hey, you guys are so stupid, I just think the answer should be X. If that has weight with you, it could be a very good tool to resolve what are kind of petty differences when bigger picture is like, hey, you guys got a $6 million project. Why are you fighting over $400 a month on some software expense that makes your life easier? Pay it. So if somebody third party says that to you, that can sometimes resolve things. Communication. This is the last one too, but communication styles are really, they cause a lot of festering, harbored ill will. This is kind of that passive aggressive, but what is your mentality? Are you a guy that sends an email and then you call and then you text and you're like, hey, where's my model? When are you going to send me the model? I just update it with those numbers. Okay, let's look at the loan terms. We got to talk to these investors. Cole might say, look, my style is, I'll get back to you, but I have another job. Every 24 hours, every night, I come in and I'll respond to your email, versus other people who don't have another job, they have higher expectations. So I see a lot of people, they start to fray because of an expectation. And I kind of hear the facts and I'm like, wow, well, it seems like you're really pushy, but if the other person signed up for that, then, I get it. Sometimes you need to work fast, and Hamza can attest, like, you need to be responsive to deals as they're moving in the market. Decisiveness and responsiveness is a big deal. And if you're a buyer that's just waiting 48 hours between every turn, sellers aren't going to like it. Brokers aren't going to like to work with you because that's slow, quote unquote slow. Yeah. Who has questions?
I just want to make sure. So if I understand what you're presenting, is for example, not the GP or the LP, is like, for example, we meet people here.
Yeah.
And we're like, why go it alone? Why don't the three of us work together? We're all taking the same class and whatever. That's what you're talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. So on the legal structure, and I don't have it here, but it would be the SPE. That's the single purpose entity or special purpose entity that owns the real estate. That's where you guys are in on equity. It may have a management LLC, but that's what you're going to have. And it's a very direct, it's very simple legal structure. Banks like it. outside investors, but everybody can understand it, and then you guys together hold your equity. One thing I didn't talk about was kind of a promote, and I wanted to answer Emmy's kind of questions, which it's confusing, and I totally get it, but if you don't go the JV kind of partners equity route and you do traditional LPs, the sources and uses for our example of 1.8 million in equity, you will have something called a promote or a lift. And it basically increases the general partner's share of the return, not in correspondence to the size of their equity check. And it's a really important concept because I think, Sean talks about it, but how it works is legal paperwork. Basically, if you cross a threshold, there will usually be a return for the LP investor, and then you have different waterfalls. I mean, Sean just kind of like drops a waterfall in there and then doesn't mention it again. But the concept is basically you have legal documents that you have the ability to assign profit. Every dollar of profit can be allocated via contract. And what I think Emmy was caught up in was like this pari passu, which is pro rata. We put $100,000 into a deal, that's 10%, then we get 10% of the cash flow, we get 10% of the capital events, which is a refinance or a sale is considered a capital event. But that's not the case. It is infinitely variable, and the most sophisticated LP structures will come up with scenarios that accurately portray risk and align incentives. So it sounds very complicated, but basically, if I'm an LP and I'm putting up 80% of the capital, I may only expect 50 or 60% of the returns, but I want 100% of the returns up to a 10% threshold. From 10 to 15%, I will accept 90%. From 15 to 20%, I will accept 15%. I'm moving downward now, so like 60%. And then any returns above 20%, call it IRR, to the LP on a project level basis get split 50-50 between the GP and the LP. And what it does is basically the LP says, look, I can make you a ton of money, but it's not unlimited. At some point, I want the pendulum to start shifting back towards the general partner. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
Do you find that from a capital raise standpoint, the more complex you make the structure, the more difficult it becomes to
Yes,
raise capital?
100%. The complexity of your LP or your waterfall structure needs to be tailored to the lowest common denominator of your investor. And so if you're talking to anybody that you want to raise money from that has a meaningful amount of capital and they don't understand it, they're not going to invest. And so I say that, and then I can go back to this pari passu because the JV structure is pretty attractive. People understand it. If you keep the pro rata distributions for tax benefits, depreciation. So for example, we have 3 guys. Even though we're each putting in $300,000 or 33% each, I could get 75% of the tax benefits. You just allocate that. It's super easy. It's very common. I get all the depreciation. And then we may differentiate cash flow that says I get 75% of cash flow because I'm the one managing the property and you guys live in California and you never visit. And then on a capital event, which is a refinance or a sale, we revert back to 33, 33, 33. So there's plenty of opportunity to make it complicated, but the JV structure, which I'm kind of advocating as that middle step, is one of the simplest ways to diversify the equity pool without going to LPs. And automatically the LP, you don't really want to be pari passu, right? But it's got to be 80-20, and then like 50-50 profit split above certain hurdles. You have preferred returns, which I think a lot of LPs in multifamily are familiar with preferred returns. Not as common on ground up development. You're not going to see a pref just because you don't need to pay it and you don't have the cash flow. So you're going to have an accrued return, but that's addressed with a hurdle at the end of the life cycle. So I don't know. I feel like I'm losing people, but at the end of the day, yeah.
Could you, when you JV, let's say there's 3 people, right, and they JV'd into one deal, can each one then individually 1031 into something?
No.
So is there a way for that to then
There
happen?
is a way you can do that. You have to do it prior to the sale. But generally the rules on 1031 is the EIN of the entity that holds the real property has to be the EIN that goes into the new one. So you can do a little bit like a swap and drop ahead of time. If it's individual and you want to tack on to a larger deal, you can do tenants in common. So there's definitely a lot of structures that you can bring in 1031 capital partners as a tenants in common structure. So again, I'll use that example, 1.8 million in equity. You get a guy with 500K in 1031. Well, Cole and I Sammy will be a one property LLC as a tenants in common with our 1031 buddy, and then we can go buy the land. So that's one way that you can bring in other investors and I guess answer that question. You talk to some potential investor and he says, hey, I want a 1031. I got a 1031 coming up. Can I do it? Your answer should be yes. Let me talk to Ron, but say yes if you want their money. It makes it a little bit more complicated, but not fatal, and banks and lenders, everybody's still very comfortable with it. So.
What's the 1031 answer for syndications?
So it's up to them whether they will accept it. But yeah, Hamza, usually they won't because the complexity is not worth it. Yeah. You have to be stroking a majority or a big portion of their equity.
Short answer.
Yeah.
That's fine, a lot of paperwork.
What's the difference with JV and syndication?
So it's the level of the equity coming in. If you're doing the JV, everybody is co-equal and expected to be, quote, active management in a legal and tax sense. They're active managers. The syndication is where you raise truly limited partners. They are passive investors. They have no day-to-day responsibilities. They have no responsibilities. They don't have any rights either. Their rights to sue are very limited. They're down to fraud and kind of bad acts. But when you're active, it's kind of like you're in bed with everybody. They are your partners. You can't sue. I mean, you can, but it's very counterproductive to sue an active member of your LLC. Because they can use LLC money to defend themselves. It's gonna, yeah. Well, it's a good deterrent, right? It's like, let's work things out if we have a disagreement, and there has to be a high level of trust. But I've seen it. You can have double approvals for bank account transfers. You can have third-party accounting, all this stuff. And but yeah. It's an attractive way, and I'm just telling you guys, like I've seen it a lot, and even if you have that equity to do that deal, you can stroke a 1.8 million check. I would say that it's worth it to deleverage a little bit so that you could do 2 of those projects and spread your risk instead of one. But we do a lot of these, in the office. That's kind of my plug. So we're up in Dallas. We do work nationwide. For commercial real estate, it's just contract based, so we don't really need to be licensed. We're not appearing in court, which you'd need to be a local license. So if you guys have any questions, I think I have my info. I feel like half the people have seen me on YouTube, but if not, I've got cards if you want to shoot me an email.
Where you are in Dallas?
Ron,
Yeah.
you handle syndications as well?
So we don't do securities work. We're a commercial real estate firm. Like we do the dirt, we do all the transactions, but we do work with securities firms. I think Hamza has. I don't know if he recommends your guys' current one, but yes, we can definitely make intros. And again, I want to say myself as a resource. If you guys have any questions, vendors, people in Dallas, legal, accounting, that's my arena. That's where I have a lot of experience, either directly or through my clients. So just shoot me an email. I'm happy to help in any way I can, because,
What do you mean by vendors?
so like phase 1 environmental, maybe a geotech, maybe you need a different survey, you need like ADA compliance, you need different city, zoning change consultant. There's all sorts of people that you're like, I got this problem, who fixes it? And that's the thing. You guys are in a whole new world. I think even commercial real estate, it's hard to Google how to find the right guy that can determine whether you're, architect, and then you've got landscape architect is not your architect, and then you've got a civil engineer, and the civil engineer says, I don't do that. That's you've got all these different specialized fields, and they're all, I dislike, they're all so finicky. They're like, I don't do that. Oh, you need this person. And I'm like, God, you guys are all just do it. But they're all different vendors, and that's my point. Is like unless you go with a really, really big architecture firm, they're not going to have those services in house. So you need so many different people on, asbestos testing, or like different materials compliance, or fill testing, like for your dirt. So if you bring in clean fill, you need a soil analysis. You need soils analysis, geotech on your existing site. But you can't just get any kind of dirt. You need to test it. And you need like certificates of the dirt. I don't know if that's something you guys cover, but like if you bring in filled dirt to your site to build it up according to your plans, you need a certificate about the cleanliness of the dirt, because it needs to be quality. You can't have trash in there that's going to compact. You can't have porous materials. You can't have metal or trash in there. So you need these certificates. And then you'll be like, Ron, I didn't know. And I'm like, well, that's why you need this guy who can come and test it.
Where is your office, in Dallas?
So we're in Dallas proper, like Campbell Center, if you know, 75 and Northwest Highway, the Gold Towers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ron, quick question. So in Plano right now, there's a lot of signs saying that there's some rezoning
Okay.
stuff going on. Could you?
What part of Plano?
And it was literally all around Plano. I kept
Hmm.
seeing signs of some rezoning with the city. Something is going on with the regulations.
Yeah, I think the city is pretty active. The good thing is that they're not necessarily against industrial, they're really against multifamily. They're like really cracking down on multifamily, so they're not granting any variances on that. But, I think Plano is a good example of mature. It's probably not going to be in your box just based on this. Like, it's infill. It's pricey. So the stuff that I own, I will sell for. I was under contract for $1 million an acre. So that's expensive. But this is industrial. It's got a building and single tenant stuff. But
Where you are building in North Texas? Which area you are looking for?
So we only buy infill. So kind of our investment thesis is we buy infill locations that the supply is supply constrained and rents can go up. Mostly we have single tenant, triple net buildings. We have the industrial outdoor storage for multiple exits. So we're buying, between 500 to 700,000 an acre. We're either leasing those out to truck parking, but then we have multiple exits for development, vertical, probably big box, bomber buildings, or not bomber buildings, but 120,000, 200,000 square foot buildings.
You're right. All right,
But,
take care, guys. Hope you get your flight.
Yeah, turn.
So I remember in one of your videos, you were looking at the Dallas map east. You were saying Garland, Mesquite. You didn't really like those areas as in compared to the west of Dallas.
So I don't know if I said that in that case. I like Garland. I like Mesquite, Rowlett. Those are working class kind of blue collar neighborhoods. So the equivalent would be like if you want to build Class C multifamily, that's workforce housing. I like it again because that's where the workers are. That's where a lot of those flex tenants want to have their businesses. But that's not necessarily the same areas that they serve. And so you have, I think you have to be on main transportation, so 635, Northwest Highway. You have to be proximately located to transportation so that the people live there, they work there, but then they go and service, like home services or other construction type people, they're going to be driving out. But I like it as an infill because it's fully developed.
Yeah.
There's no land. You can't build flex profitably. You need to go to the ETJs. You need to be in Forney, Seagoville, up north by like McKinney. But even McKinney is so expensive. So you need to be in Anna. You need to be in Melissa. People are buying in Prosper. Really? So, I mean, you got to be in Denison. You can buy in Denison or Sherman. TI is building that huge plant, so you know, Dallas is different. I think you got to draw that map, but just look at the land prices and be in the path of progress. So, I mean, again, I like it if you're buying existing product, because we're paying over $100 a foot for existing flex. That's going to be different than you guys trying to build cost effectively.
Are you able to find $100 per square feet?
Yeah, I was telling Hamza, we just put an offer for 60,000 square foot flex deal. It's off of 80 and Northwest Highway in Garland.
Okay.
60,000 square feet. It's fully leased, but they're all on gross leases.
Okay.
So we'll put an offer in and see if we can convert them over to triple net. Then that's the business plan.
Yeah.
It's like literally just buy, convert, and yeah. I mean, I think this is my guess. Like I kind of think interest rates are going to drop. So if we can buy at this rate and get a positive leverage, then if we sell at a lower interest rate, we'll just sell at a lower cap. You don't need to make a bunch of money if the cap rate drops 2 points. So.
What's the base rent in that area right now?
I don't know what, I mean, I would say market is between $11 to $12. So
But is this flex or industrial?
it's flex.
And how individual bays?
Mm-hmm.
What is the size?
60,000.
And no, per bay?
15 to 3,000.
That's pretty good. So all you do is convert to triple net, and
That's the plan. It's all automotive users. So it's a little bit issue, but they've got good parking. Parking lot's in great shape. It's all concrete.
What's the size of the land?
2.5 acres. Yeah. Just single building. Yeah.
60,000 into an half acre is a pretty good.
60,000 on 2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as per formula, it should be like 25,000 to 30,000, but it's 60,000.
Yeah. Well, it's infill. It's tight. So
Yeah, Garland is pretty much.
we're direct to the owner, so he kind of had his whisper pricing at 110, and we're like, all right, we'll offer 105, and if he wants to go up to 110, we'll have to have seller financing, something to juice it up. So.
Are you JVing that one?
No, we'll probably just put our own money in. If we do seller financing, we'll probably only have to put in $2 million. So.
Oh, he's going to finance you the whole deal. Or I was thinking like you were going to ask for seller financing on.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll see. So we're direct to the owner on that one. If we made our low offer, or it's kind of high, I guess, with seller financing, but it's two levers, right? I think if he counters, we just pull another lever. So we need that cash on cash, and we need some seller financing, because he's indicated he'll do seller financing. So we say, if you want a high price, then we need seller financing to juice our cash on cash and almost do like IO for 12 months. Give us time to reposition the asset and refinance.
Is he? Oh, okay. So he was just going to give it IO for 12.
Well, I know.
I mean, you could ask for it. I
We-
was going to say,
we can-
well, what is he going to ask for?
Right. Well, we
He's
made
gonna
our
say-
offer. Seller financing is on the table with no other details.
Oh, just
So we made our offer, and if he says, oh, that price is too low, then we'll need to juice up the seller financing. If he says, no, I'd rather get cash, then we'll drop our basis to get it low and finance. But that's something that you guys have to learn, I think, is Sean's example. You got to be indifferent between the two things. There is a minimum level, but like even looking at these less than desirable sites, there's a price that you're willing to pay for the land until it comes too far down that you don't think there's demand. But you can build anywhere if the price is right, if you think there's some demand. Or if you know what the market rent is and there's demand for it, but then that pushes your price down. But you got to make an offer and move on. It's a numbers game. And then you need your Facebook links to be coming in. But underwrite it quickly, make an offer, and move on. There's going to be a lot of sellers. They're just pie in the sky. They're not in any rush. They're not real sellers. And then that's not your job. Your job is to find the 300,000. I'm serious though. That those exist. A lot of these smaller land parcels, they're held free and clear. They've held them for a long time. They're disconnected from market, and you just tell them, oh, construction crisis, oh, inflation, oh, it's so hard. And the sellers are going to agree with it. They're like, yeah, I see that in the news. And you're like, well, so you got to sell it to me for this price to make my project work. You say, do you have any other offers? No. Do you want to pay property taxes next year? No. Sell it to me. And to me, it's like, it's your job to find that. But you don't find it by like locking on to a seller that wants 800,000 and they drop to 775 and 750, and it's like, no, you need to be in the 3s or 4s, or 5 is the market value. But you can't be fighting with him at 7 if the market value is 5. It's not worth it. You just move on. He's not a real seller. So.
Is it, how, on average, like in general, when we're talking about rezoning, on average, how long does it take? I know this is like a very
3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months.
Yeah, because here the biggest variables on the rezoning is, do you have opposition? So you send out your notices. You have to post your notices for 60 days. It depends if you have opposition. If you don't, it can probably go through quicker. You got to wait at least 30 days to post it, and then you got to wait 30 days to submit to the city council. Then you got to get on the next month's agenda. So that's probably 3 months right there. But if you're unopposed and the city doesn't have any horrible objections, you can get it through. But if somebody opposes you, then you're going to have this hearing, and then they're going to voice their concerns. And they may say something about like traffic and noise, and then you have to go commission traffic studies and noise. And you have some weird things where you may build barriers. So like if you're adjacent to residential, it's like a huge pain in the ass. But if those neighbors oppose your rezoning, you can counter propose as well. Let me build 12 feet of masonry fence to block the noise. And sometimes those are things that get in. Or you build a natural barrier, like a hedge. They call it like hedges.
Will I need like an expert like you?
Yeah, I mean, not even me. You need like a city use attorney. There's planning consultants. It's expensive with no guarantees.
So the deal has to be like a gold mine for me to go through it.
I mean, defer to Hamza, but I would not say for you guys, a project with a zoning change is a home run. It can't be. Not at this level.
It can't be or
Cannot. I mean, I defer to Hamza, but my experience is zoning changes are pretty painful without knowing specifics, okay? Like if you're in the middle of an industrial area and you want to convert from commercial to industrial, and industrial is all around you, and you're just on a hard corner that used to be like a gas station, yeah, I mean, okay, maybe you could do that. But if you're here on this property and you got residential over here and they really want restaurants and it's zoned for commercial, you're never going to. It's impossible.
This is master plan.
We have a list of probably over 300 or 400 sites, and we just go through and rank them, and then we have like a composite score, and just off market. These days with like PropStream and some of the other open corporates and stuff, like you just get emails, you get text, phone. I mean, so we're like texting. One of my partners, he's more of the acquisitions guy, but he'll do text, he'll do mailers, he'll do phone calls. He like tracks people down and really just finds out who they are. He'll call lawyers pretending to be like, oh yeah, I got this check for the owner of this, can I just send it to him? And I'm like, that's kind of unlawful. And he's like, oh, it's the lawyer's fault. They shouldn't have given me the address. And I was like, yeah, but you lied. He's like, I got the address. But anyway, but yeah, so developing a system, because for us, like these iOS sites, they're a little bit too small, they're sub-institutional, and the price point, even at like 3 million, at least in the past couple years that we've been doing this, it was never worth any broker's time. We could never get any good leads. They would bring us like 10-acre sites, or like 20-acre sites. Like, I can't buy that, this is a lot of money. And so we had to do our own. And I think off-market too, it really resonates with the seller. It's like no broker. It's what's a fair price? Let them throw out a number, and you're like, great, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For a lot of us, I think first steps, legal-wise, is contracts, transaction contracts.
Yeah.
Is that something that you can?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll do entity formation. We'll make your LLC. I think if you don't have an LLC already, you should probably just form one as a holding company. Figure out your kind of brand, what your name is, and it's going to help your LOIs. It's going to be much better than just Josh from South Carolina, I want to buy this property. Does it work? Yes. If your terms are good and the numbers make sense, they don't care if you're from Mars. But in having an LLC at least gives you a certain level of credibility if you don't have everything nailed away. So we'll do entity formation. You can either draft the LOI or like Sean was saying, we have the LOI on ACRE, the website template. You can download that. It's for industrial properties. It's free. And then when you do have an agreed upon LOI, then come to us for the contract, and then we'll draft the contract. You can use either a form contract from your state Realtors Association, but if there's addendums or if you need extra time, that's where we come in, because you don't want to let your broker and you guys yourself don't want to draft clauses about extension of due diligence or like, you know, contingent on seller doing X. I mean, what does that even mean? You really have to define it and legally make it enforceable to protect your earnest money. And then, yeah, we'll review title, we review survey, we'll help you order, you know, the Alta, the phase 1, PCA. Well, I guess you guys don't have a building, but we'll be looking at all those things, easements, zoning reports. There's all these pieces of paper that you're kind of like, hey, who's going to look at it? What's your opinion, Ron? Like, do we need to push for it? And then, you know, helping you guys close and doing all the owner to GC contracts, all the subcontractors. I don't know if you guys talk about it, but like Alex was doing, a lot of owners like to do some of the GC work themselves up front, whether it's site work, it's hiring the architects, working with the city preliminarily, and then hire a GC. You save a lot of time, but you also like learn those front things. And those front projects are probably the simplest ones. Earthwork, site work, maybe foundation, but then you've got to stub out plumbing and electrical, so it's a little bit complicated, but it's certainly feasible. And then you bring in your GC once you go vertical, because you're not going to be necessarily inspecting every purloin and like every screw and be like, oh, where's the washer on this outside fastener? The GC and the owner, you know, they got to do that. So, but the point is, scope of work for vendors is critical. And if you don't have a good legal description, if you don't have good written change order stuff, you're going to get hosed on fees, and they're just going to start billing you, because in most states in Texas, you know, the contractors have the upper hand. They just file a lien, and your property is there, and you don't have a choice, and now you want to refinance or you want to sell, and you have this dispute over $50,000 that you never agreed to, and the GC just did something. He has a lien, and he has the presumption of correctness. It sucks, but basically that's how the law protects contractors. So your tool is to get lien waivers, conditional lien waivers, unconditional lien waivers for progress payments, but you've really got to control that process and know, you know, contractually you have to pay the guy, but how much do you pay him and what does he owe you back? I would say every single one of my client developer projects, you have some type of dispute with a vendor, whether it's a material. I mean, I've had it where like the roofing guy comes up to me and he's like, Ron, I didn't get paid. I'm like, why do I care? But then the owner is like, why is this guy telling me he didn't get paid? I'm like, well, he can file a constitutional lien on your property. And I'm like, I don't even know him. I never hired him, but it doesn't matter. He supplied materials and he dropped them off on the project and he didn't get paid. So you as the owner have a duty to figure out how to get him paid. Yeah, so we deal with that. Loan documents, we'll review bank loan documents, promissory note, personal guarantees, all that good stuff. And then leasing, you know, that's so far down the road for you guys, but we'll deal with it when we get there.
Cover us all the way.
Every transactional contract, yeah, I mean, I say we don't go to court, we don't sue people, we'll try to work out resolutions, but yeah, we're a transactional dirt law firm. We're not securities, we don't do, you know, evictions, well, you know, we kind of oversee them, but yeah, we do acquisitions and leasing. So we'll help you buy it and help you lease it up.
I'm just going to add that, you know, we are all very fortunate to have somebody like Ron in the room, because when we started out, we didn't have that kind of buffer. And there's a lot of attorneys you can hire, and they'll take your money, but they won't really give you the time of day. And to have somebody like Ron as like a buffer between the two, like for example, if you need a securities attorney, Ron doesn't do that, but he could still kind of be that buffer, and then kind of walk you through that entire, you know, buy process.
Yep.
The development process. So you can almost kind of think of him as a, you know, I'm gonna take one from a movie, consigliere. You know what I mean? Like he's like your kind of like your guardian angel, right? He can watch over you from all legal matters, like a corporate counsel, except you're
Yeah.
So I would highly consider using somebody like Ron, or Ron, and he can really protect you and kind of encapsulate your risk when you're engaging in a project, right? So it's really worth its money in gold. So I'm sure Ron is going to get you guys all some really good pricing and packages.
Oh, yeah.
Consider that.
But yeah, so I've had my own firm for 6 years, and then prior to that, I was general counsel for a real estate developer. So we built multifamily and senior living, and we actually did a cool project in Houston. We did build for rent, like before build for rent was a thing. We built 68 duplexes in this subdivision. It was like a failed subdivision that the guy put in roads and utilities and then just abandoned it. And we built it out 68, and we're like, this is stupid. These are like it cost us like $100,000 for these duplexes. We can rent them out for like $1,500. Why would we sell it for $120,000? And it was like, oh, we'll just rent them out. And
How much is what state specific? So I'm not Texas based.
Yeah.
So
so we do work in all 50 states. I mean, maybe minus California. So for commercial stuff, it's all contractual. So we're dealing with the paper. We're not going to court. We're not interpreting state law. It's just governed by the paper. I think, again, I can be that resource that, if there are things that exceed or you need a local counsel, I'm gonna find that referral or hand it off. But yeah, there's a lot. I would say 90% of all the situations or scenarios that are just fine.
Okay.
It's only when you like go to court or you got to sue somebody. Some of the lien enforcement will pull in local counsel, but that's really it. I mean, like labor laws, if somebody gets hurt on your property, you'll probably have to refer that, but that gets caught up by insurance. No, we do a lot of leasing. We do nationwide leasing.
Okay.
Yeah, leasing's not.
Big corporations, like, let's say we have retail businesses too, like Simon.
Yeah, I mean, so I do a lot of landlord retail, so I'm probably on your other side mostly. But yeah, happy to help or take a look at your leases if you have some question. And I know.
So you said don't let your broker write up the.
So I have a rule that is years of experience. Is basically the broker gets about 5 or 6 words. They're allowed to write something like, seller will remove X before closing. Like they can do that. But if they write more than 6 words, they get into the practice of law, and then they say like, seller will remove this tractor unless it sells at auction for more than $50,000, in which case seller will leave it on the property. And you're like, okay, but what if they don't put it to auction, or what if it sells for less than like? There's all these permutations, and then you get to the day before closing, you're like, why is this thing here? Seller is supposed to remove it, and then we got to go back at this broker drafted clause that just says seller will remove this unless X, and then we have no idea how to interpret. And then it's like, well, what happens if he doesn't? You don't have to close, and removing that stuff. So brokers like to do what they can. They don't want to kill the deal with lawyers. Again, I'll say this is my plug, and that I think I'm unique than every other lawyer you talk to, or most lawyers, is I do my own deals. So I'm an investor. Like I get out there and I know that you need to make a decision. So Cole will say, Ron, do I close or not? And I'll be like, okay, it's just a tractor, it's kind of small. If it's still a good deal, I would close and just don't worry about it. But if I say, hey, this is like potentially hazardous and like it's full of fuel and like oil, and no, I would say don't close. You don't have an obligation. I would not close. And then that's great. That's more useful advice, I think, from my clients that says, I would not close with this condition, but it's up to you. You may close, and that's totally fine. So yeah, that's just kind of where I'm different. And I encourage you, like I would love it. Like talk to a lawyer, somebody and be like, so you know so much about retail. Like, do you own any shopping centers? Do you own this? And then most of the guys are like, oh, no. I'm like, but you know all this information. You have all this money. Why don't you?